coffee cup. Never ever start the day without Will. His wit and wisdom let me see all the foibles of the century. There's no way to start my day without Will. Just multiply me by the millions, from Gotham out to Frisco Bay. Those Toms and Dicks and Jacks and Jillians are asking, hey, did you see what Will said today? He's also king of Hollywood now. He stands where Valentino stood.
Biggest movie star by far is our Will.
At any time around the clock, lines keep forming all around the block. Watch them through the movie till for our Will. He's got more fans than Shirley Temple.
He's got more fans than Shirley
He
Temple.
beat her out as number one.
He beat her out as number one.
He draws more crowds than Amy Semple.
He draws more crowds than Amy
The
Semple.
country'd rather do the dance that
Will's begun. Will-O-Mania. This dance has swept the nation. Will-O-Mania. Dance of communication. Black bottom Charleston, you have seen your last day. So scratch your skull, put your head through the display. We're calling Will-O-Mania. It's intercontinental. Will sure gets around. The shim sham shimmies now, a dance that's been had. Your drum, your horse, and your
So I won't get there late, cause I've got this very special date once a week. The night belongs to my will.
By means of coast-to-coastal network, his words go floating everywhere. Each family hopes to make his set work, so they can say to hear what Will said on the air. Did you hear what Will said on the air? Did you hear what Will said on the air? Did you hear, did you hear, did you hear, did you hear, did you hear what Will said on the air? Wilhelmina, this dance has swept the nation. Wilhelmina, dance of communication. The Clapper City Slicker, farmland and brew. Connected by signals from a vacuum tube. Wilhelmina, please also hit the White House. We'll sure dance around. He talks so very, very, tells us what's what. Absolutely stars in the sky, colors and never met a man I didn't like. Highfalutin gent, or Bowery bum. Yes, I've come a long way down the pike. Never met a man I didn't like. Howdy. I said howdy. Howdy. Well, that was some entrance, wasn't it? Well, that's Mr. Ziegfeld's idea on how to open a show. Anyway, I guess I can't complain too much since I liked it a whole lot better than his first idea, which was to come in the same way, only without the rope. Anyway, I'm real glad to see you folks here tonight because Wednesday night is my favorite show of the week. And I did not say that yesterday. No, sir, yesterday I said Tuesday was my favorite show of the week. Anyway, it occurs to me that most of you folks, when you hear the name Will Rogers, well, you half expect the ushers to come walking down those aisles and send those little cans down the rows to pick up your loose change for the Will Rogers Hospital and Institute. Well, you can relax. We're not going to be doing that tonight. Mainly on account of we already took most of your money when you bought your tickets. Can you believe what they're charging for theater tickets these days? When I heard what they were charging for this show, I thought they were still looking for investors. So I guess we owe you something for it, which means I better get back to work. See ya. Don't go far now. Oh, thank you. You know, this little act with the rope is the same one I've been annoying audiences with all my life. Mr. Ziegfeld, too. Well, he only put up with my little act to kill time while the girls are changing from nothing into... well, nothing. Anyway, I was kind of surprised to hear from Mr. Florence Ziegfeld after all these years. And I was even more surprised when he suggested it was time to do another one of his Follies shows.
Especially since the last one he produced personally was over 60 years ago in 1931. Then he said he wanted to do the show about me. Well, I told him I was flattered, but I didn't think my life was laid out quite right for a Follies show. But Mr. Ziegfeld said not to worry about the order of things. And, well, his idea of my life was a whole lot more theatrical than the way I actually lived it. And he'd be able to set us straight from time to time because he'd be looking down. No, not from heaven. I'd be mighty surprised if he ended up anywhere in that particular vicinity. No, I meant that he put in a little window up there so he can look down and see how his show was moving along. So I guess I better move it along. Oh, but before I forget, I want to introduce you folks to someone really famous sitting right here in our audience. America's greatest aviator and a fellow Oklahoman, Mr. Wiley Post. Stand up, Wiley.
Take off, hey, let's go flying.
Let's go flying, Will.
Anytime, partner. You know, Wiley's the first fellow in history to fly solo around the world, and he did it in just under 8 days. Well, heck, nowadays you can get halfway down the Guadalupe Parkway in that amount of time. Hey, you're doing all right, folks. You might get out of here early tonight. Well, it takes twice as long if you have to explain the jokes. Great seeing you, Wiley. Okay, let's try this now. You know, believe it or not, there's a lot of folks who say this ain't respectable work. My pa having been one of them. But there's nothing wrong with swinging a rope, as long as your neck's not in it. As a kid, I tied some knots, and I learned to make a loop. Spun it horizontal to the ground. Practiced lassoing the fence post and most anything I found. I even roped my sisters when they dared to come around. This pastime was my solitary skill. And people asked, what will become of Will? So I told them, give a man enough rope, give a man enough rope, and he can hang himself or not. That is the choice that he's got. He could wind up hanging down from a tree, or he can spin himself a life. That's what happened to me. Give a man enough rope.
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 You hand two guys a pile of dough. One spends it fast, one saves it slow. You make a choice.
You make a choice.
Up to you what you do.
Up to you what you do.
This act ain't much, but through it I've met kings and queens, and I got to meet you. Everybody spins with a different twist. Some use elbow grease, some just flick their wrist. If you wanna aim for the great big old
Go for broke, just let her go. Never let them see that there's effort there. You may sweat inside to be debonair. If you go for tears or you go for jokes, shrug it off,
it's nothing, folks. Give a man enough rope.
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 It's good to set your sights up high, but don't expect high in the sky. A guy might rush for that old pot of gold. He might not reach the rainbow's end because, my friend, the world is rounder, so we are told.
Or so we are told. A guy could choose to run a bank. Another lives to till the soil, or practice law or violin,
Or maybe sell banana oil.
banana oil. One builds a barn, one writes a song. One digs a ditch, one teaches school.
But from the day I came along, I've always been a roping fool.
He's just a roping fool. I see him.
Hey! Try this. get all tangled in the figure eights he tried to spin. But I've had luck, and my ropes made me free. I spun my fancy figures, wrote my columns, made my speeches, loved my horses, loved my family, spun a lovely life. That's what happened to me.
Spun his figures, wrote his columns, made his speeches, loved his horses, loved his family, spun a lovely life. Give a man enough rope.
Thank you.
Here's today's San Jose Mercury News, Mr. Rogers.
Well, thank you. You know, she'd do wonders for the circulation of the Mercury News. Well, like I always say, all I know is what I read in the papers. You know, this is about the only paper you can get around here that has words to go with its pictures. You know, my pa is like the Merc on account of, well, it never cluttered up his mind with 2 points of view. All righty, here we go. Wednesday, March 26, 1997. Losing makes Sharks fans grow restless. Well, maybe it gets funnier on the inside. See, Newt Gingrich seeks ways to pay huge ethics fines. You know, I bet old Newt's kind of wishing he didn't have to give up that $4.5 million advance for those 2 books he wrote. Now, I'm glad he did that, though. That just wouldn't feel right to me. You know, I just think there's something fundamentally wrong in America if you got a politician making almost as much money as a basketball player. Let's see here. Wet spring worries Napa growers. Boy, it sure is beautiful up in Napa Valley this time of the year, though. And they have got some of the best bed and breakfast joints up there this side of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Yeah, I don't know if you can find a Lincoln bedroom up there, but they tend to get a little pricey anyway. Let's see, PG&E gets a huge rate increase it doesn't even want. Some jokes don't even need a punchline. Let's see, cold weather chills tourist trade in Nice, France. You know, that's how they pronounce that town. Nice. Well, the French don't have a word for nice. You know, it's a funny thing, but these are the exact same articles I used to see in the paper 60, 70 years ago. Hey, maybe some of the things I said back then might still make a little bit of sense today. Let's try it. Anybody got a 60-year-old paper back there? Thank you. All right, New York Times, Saturday, August 17th, 1935. Will Rogers and Wiley Post die in an airplane crash in Alaska. Now, we don't need to be reminded about that, do we, Wiley?
Let's go flying, Will.
You know, Wiley is still the greatest flyer in history. If you don't count that one time. Can you make that a 70-year-old paper?
Here's your 70-year-old newspaper, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Was that in your way? I'd hate for you to get a stiff neck down there. All right, here we go. The New York Times, Thursday, April 7th, 1927. New Yugoslav Republic torn by ethnic strife. Anti-cigarette legislation pending in 42 states. The president accused of philandering. Are you sure this is the old paper? You know, I got a strange feeling they've been stealing money by putting out the same paper every day for 70 years. The president vows to trim excess fat in government. You know, I think our current president could do that real quick just by staying away from McDonald's. He must be a Republican. Now, I know we'd like to joke up here, but actually I do have complete faith in our president. Her husband, Bill, scares me a little, but... See, another filibuster paralyzes Congress. Lord, how they love to talk. You know, the other day, a congressman stood up and objected to a certain Oklahoma comedian for poking fun at the Congress. The thing is about my little jokes is they don't hurt anybody. Now, with Congress, when they make a joke, it's a law. You must be a Democrat. When they make a law, it's a joke. Let's see, Wall Street attorney robbed. Now, I thought they had an understanding that crooks didn't rob crooks. You folks want to talk that one over a little bit there? Okay, now this is a place where Mr. Ziegfeld wants me to introduce someone very important. Important to me, that... Huh? Well, how long do they need?
A minute?
A minute? Well, I guess I knew there'd be days like these. Maestro? Now, hold on, hold on. If we don't get a whole lot better than this, we're all in a whole lot of trouble. All right, now this here's what we call a merry-go-round. The only amazing thing about that trick is you folks paid good money to see it. All right, now this here's what we call a wedding ring. So I guess you could call this next one a divorce. And this next one is what we like to refer to as a Hollywood wedding ring. Thank you. Huh?
15 seconds.
All right. Okay, for the grand finale, I'd like to do one of the old classics of fancy rope tricks, a Texas skip. Got all my feet through but one there. All right, we're gonna have to get serious now. Okay, we're gonna have to up the ante a little bit now and do a Texas skip with a Ross Perot campaign hitch. I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, no doggone it, I'm out. Thank you. Okay, now, this is a place where Mr. Ziegfeld wants me to introduce someone very important. Important to me, that is, on account of, without him, I wouldn't be standing here today. And that's my pa, Mr. Clement V. Rogers. But first, I gotta set up the scene. Now, this is our little ranch house in Oklahoma, and these are my 6 beautiful sisters. And the date is November 4th, 1879. And the reason I remember that so well is that's the day I was born.
Yippee-yay! Yippee-yay! I hit the old bullseye! Hooray, 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 at last it's a boy. Hey, you got me a boy. Step right up, it's a boy. I got a son and an heir. What else can compare? I haven't a care. I want to sing hosannas. Hooray, hooray, although I love all my girls, 6 are plenty of girls. After all of those girls, I gave it 1 extra shot. I'm praying a lot, and look what I got. I'm passing out Havanas. Yippee-yay! He'll keep a sign on the family name. Yippee-yay! His pa's a rancher, so he'll be the same. with cattle standing out yonder for miles around. That's why I'm handing the smokes and the smiles around. Hooray, 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 at last it's a male, and his powerful wail says he's hardy and hale, and he'll be proud as can be when he knows that he is part Cherokee like his pa. My hope's no longer slim, I'm way out on a limb, hopes are riding on him. 'Cause he'll grow up to be a hell of a man. I'll make him a man, a hell of a man like yours truly. Hooray, hooray, hooray for my lucky star. Have a cigar, I'm jumping for joy. At last, it's a boy. You gotta keep trying. At last, it's a boy. Yeah.
Now that I'm 13 years old, Pa, I got some bad news.
Oh, Lord, son, don't tell me you've been expelled from school again. You've got to get an education, boy, so you'll never have to worry about winding up in the Congress. Will, I've sent you to 6 schools in the past 7 years, and you've never made it past the 5th grade.
The other kids keep making fun of me, Pa. They call me a redskin.
You're not a redskin, Willie. You're an Indian. Why, our people didn't come over on the Mayflower. We met the boat. Oh, go get yourselves married. Go on.
Oh, now that I'm 19 years old, Pa, I got an announcement to make.
Uh-oh, sounds like more bad news to me.
Made up my mind, Pa. I'm going down to Argentina to be a cowboy.
Argentina? I always counted on you staying here and running this ranch.
It ain't in me to run anything, Pa. Why can't I do with my life what I want to?
Well, I reckon you will, son. But I wouldn't be a good father if I didn't make it as difficult as possible. Now, will you stop twirling that damn rope while I'm talking to ya? When your ma died, I promised I'd raise you proper. I'm getting ready to admit defeat. Sometimes I think the only reason for your birth was to give me something curious to look at in my old age. Now you're staying here, and that's final.
Sorry, Pa, but I'm going down to Argentina.
And I say you're staying here and running this ranch.
Well, I hate to tell you this, Pa, but I don't see any way in the world you're gonna stop me.
Me neither. All right, Willie. You go to Argentina, but let me tell you something. When you've ruined your life and you're down and out without a friend in the world or a dollar to your name, just remember this piece of fatherly advice. I told you so. Now get the hell out of here while I'm still in a good mood. All I can say is a man's a fool if he thinks his son is going to come anywhere near to his father's dreams for him. Hooray, hooray, some dirty work has been done. He can't be the real one. Can't be Clem Rogers' son. He says he don't want a ranch. Some rotten branch must be part Comanche for sure. To Argentina he'll scheme. What a crack-potted scheme. It's the end of my dream. 'Cause he will never be a hell of a man, a looked-up to man, a hell of a man like yours truly. But what the hey-de-hey, I still got 6 girls, 6 million curls. I'm jumping for joy. Goodbye, Willie boy. Don't ride for money. Goodbye, Willie boy.
I know my Pa did everything in the world for me, and he tried to make more out of me than I am, but how come amounting to something is always somebody else's idea of what you ought to do with your life? You know, it's a funny thing, but the minute a fella becomes a father, it's like he forgets everything he knew about being a son. So long, Pa, I'm on my way to see the world so big and wide. I might find something I can do, find the guy who's here inside. So long, Pa, I'm off today. I hope before my journey ends, I might learn a trick or two, so you can brag to all your friends. So I'm off to Argentina, because there's a whole lot of people out there, and, well, even back then I knew I wanted to meet as many of them as my time on Earth would allow, because people are what life's all about.
Just a moment, Mr. Rogers.
Yes, Mr. Ziegfeld?
Mr. Rogers, forgive me for interrupting, but you've been out there for 2 scenes, and we still haven't met the girl. As you should know, in a Ziegfeld production, the romance never starts later than the 3rd scene.
I warned you folks this might happen. I know he sounds a little bit pushy, but you just got to think of what it was like to grow up in Chicago with a name like Florence. You know, come to think of it, Mr. Ziegfeld, I did meet Betty Blake before I went away. It was at the railroad station. Betty was the sweetest, prettiest girl in the whole territory. She's working at the freight office, and I was expecting a new suit of long underwear from back east for my trip to Argentina. You know the kind with that little trap door in the back?
How very romantic. And where was this enchanted railroad station?
Oologah, Oklahoma.
Oh, absolutely not, Mr. Rogers. In a Ziegfeld show, nothing ever happens in Oologah. Stage manager, please.
Yes, Mr. Z?
Peter, have we got a set back there we can use? Something exotic, something Ziegfeldian?
We've got that Fiji Island set, Mr. Z.
Fiji Islands? Oh, come on, Mr. Ziegfeld. You might as well say Betty and I met on the moon.
Brilliant, Mr. Rogers. You met your wife on the moon. Peter, go set up the moon immediately. Well, don't just stand there, Mr. Rogers. You're going to meet your wife, Betty, on the moon.
Yes, sir, Mr. Ziegfeld.
Here I am, Betty Blake, a simple farm girl from Arkansas who's staying with my favorite single sister because I landed a really swell job at the freight office of the Missouri Pacific Railroad here on the moon. But despite all the stories about the man in the moon, I haven't met him yet.
Sing, Miss Blake.
I beg your pardon?
We've had quite enough exposition, Miss Blake. Sing, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Ziegfeld. How small the earth seems, poor little planet, viewing it from a distance, light years away, way off in a starlit place. Here I sit mooning on the moon, mooning, questioning my existence, just a tiny speck alone in space. I'm drifting, I'm floating, a leaf in the wind, an aimless seedling sailing on the air. I'm empty, yet filled with some nameless feeling. I ache to come to rest somewhere in someone's arms, in someone's heart, some unknown someone's life, somewhere. My hours are endless, my days have no shape, my nights are spent at moonlit solitaire. I'm busy, yet some wondrous thing is missing. I long for, I don't know, but I know it must be there in someone's eyes, in someone's smile, a face I'll see someday, somewhere. I'm weary of drifting, a change hovers in the air, a sea change, a sky change, I feel that it's almost there.
excuse me, are you the station master?
I'm his assistant. Is there something that I can do for you? I said, is there anything that I can do for you?
Did I happen to mention that I'm expecting a new suit of long underwear that's due in on the 5 o'clock rocket?
Well, so far you didn't happen to mention anything at all.
Well, that's because I'm painfully shy. I once let an entire barn burn down because I was too shy to yell fire.
Hey, by any chance, are you that shiftless Rogers boy I've heard so much about? Who lives on a ranch a few miles out and who spends most of your time spinning a rope, so how can you possibly amount to anything?
I guess so.
Glad to meet you. I'm Betty Blake, a simple farm girl from Arkansas who's staying with my favorite single sister here on the moon because...
Did you say single sister? It just so happens I got a single sister, too. 6 of them, in fact.
6 single sisters? Oh, gosh, that's hard to say. You probably won't believe this, but I've got 6 single sisters myself.
Did you hear that, folks? 6 single sisters each. Isn't that amazing? Well, it's hard to imagine any 2 people with more in common than that. We'll just skip the next few lines. It didn't amount to much anyway and get right to the good part. Gosh, you sure are nice, Betty Blake. In fact, you look like the kind of girl who comes along once in a blue earth.
Thank you. You seem like a pretty down-to-moon person yourself.
I sure would like to hear you sing sometime.
Why, Will Rogers, how did you know that I can sing?
Well, because in a Ziegfeld show, everybody who's dressed can sing. So, how about it?
You mean you want me to sing right now?
No, I meant about my underwear. Has it come in yet?
Oh, well, the 5 o'clock ought to be arriving any minute now.
Hello there!
Hello, Mr. Engineer. How was your trip?
Not too bad. I lost a little time chugging around the Big Dipper, but I made it up along the Milky Way. Oh, I've got this package addressed to that shiftless Rogers boy who lives on a ranch a few miles out. Feels like long underwear.
Thank you, Mr. Engineer. Would you care for a glass of moonshine?
Oh, no, I gotta stay on my toes. So long, honey. See you in a light year or so. All aboard!
Here's your long underwear, Will Rogers.
Oh, that's just great. I can't wait to try them on.
Well, I've got a better idea. Why don't we go for a long walk out to the edge of the Sea of Tranquility? I hear there's going to be a full Earth tonight.
Gee, that sounds wonderful, Betty Blake. I'd just love to. Just as soon as I get back from Argentina.
Argentina?
That's where I decided to seek my fortune. But when I get back, if you're still single like your 6 sisters, I'd just love to take that walk. I'll only be gone a year. So long, Betty Blake. Oh, I promise to write.
Adios! Oh, adios very much. The moon mist is lifting, a change hovers in the air, a sea change, a sky change. I feel that it's almost there. My journey's end. Lover, friend. My shiftless someone in Argentina.
All right, so he didn't finish his education, and he didn't want to run the ranch, and he deserted me when I needed him the most. But did he have to go and make me the grouchy old grump of this show? This role of Clem is all frustration mixed with rage. Unsympathetic parts can sink you on the stage. Just stick around until my warmth comes shining through. I don't get lovable till somewhere in Act 2.
I have been asked to deliver a postcard to Miss Betty Blake. Miss Betty Blake, there's a postcard for you from Will Rogers.
Thank you. Dear Blake, here I am in South Africa. South Africa?
He didn't like Argentina.
Oh, thank you. Came here on a cattle boat and got seasick. In fact, I was so sick that even the cows couldn't bear to watch me. Do you mind?
Oh, excuse me.
When I got here, I found a job spinning a rope in Texas Jack's Wild West show. What are you doing?
Practicing. I'm your understudy.
Oh! You know, we're not exactly the same type. Why do you think they picked you?
Well, I'm Mr. Ziegfeld's type, honey.
Oh. Anyway, now I've got some really good news. After being gone for over a year, Texas Jack is finally bringing the whole show back to the US of A, as he has booked us into the St. Louis World's Fair. He's coming back. Isn't that wonderful?
Well, there's more. Oh, you want me to read it?
I'll do it. Gosh, you just can't wait, can you? On the way home, we have to play Australia and New Zealand. So if you're counting the days like I am, the exact number is 642. 642? Will Rogers! I am not wasting my youth on some shiftless, uneducated, rope-throwing, no-account, Cherokee show business cowboy. No, sir! Not this simple farm girl from Arkansas.
Excuse me, honey. Do you want those 642 days to pass just like that?
Oh, yes, I really do.
Well, then you just leave it to me. Here, take this. Ladies and gentlemen! So just stand there, honey. Go make your change.
Oh, right. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, by special arrangement with Mr. Ziegfeld, that pussycat. It is now 642 days later, and the St. Louis World's Fair of 1904 presents inside and in person genuine cowboys and Indians displaying their incredible skill and mastery of the untamed Broncos and Mustangs of the great American prairie. Direct from their triumphal world tour, Texas Jack Mulhouse. Spectacular Wild West Show!
And yes, you've seen us before. We'll Rogers sisters before. But what are Follies girls for? So now we're ready like six single sisters, but we don't get a breath and or. Hi, Betty.
Cora Anna Wade, Theta Virginia Sulecki. I'm sorry to have dragged you out of Texas Jack's Wild West show featuring Will Rogers, the Cherokee Kid, but I simply could not bear to watch a minute longer because I do not consider the show business a respectable place for a grown man to earn his living. It's been almost 3 years since I've seen Will Rogers, and I am not going to wait a minute longer because as soon as I get him to quit the show business and start behaving like a normal person, That's when I'm gonna marry him.
Oh, Betty, that's wonderful. Has he asked you yet?
Well, that depends on what you call asking.
We call asking.
Well, in that case, not yet. So, now you girls run along and see Mr. Edison's amazing Hall of Electricity, because I'm going to wait right here by the stage door to see Will Rogers, and perhaps we can settle this business once and for all.
Hello, girls.
Hello, Will.
Oh, if I didn't know better, I'd swear those were my 6 single sisters. Betty Blake. It really is you. When I saw you out in the audience, I nearly fell off my horse. So, what'd you think of the show?
That was just about the most disgusting spectacle I have ever witnessed.
You mean my roping act?
Oh, of course not. Your act was wonderful. But do you have to do it with all those people watching?
Betty, are you talking about the audience?
Well, to stand out there in front of total strangers. Will Rogers, where's your shame?
Now, folks, how can you not love somebody like that? So I explained to her that I couldn't earn a living only doing the act in front of friends and family. And after engaging in a little small talk that's too sappy to repeat here, we found ourselves looking down on St. Louis from on top of the Ferris wheel.
Will, look, you can see all the way to Illinois.
So, suppose you had your share of felons while I was gone.
Well, there were a few, but only one that you had to worry about.
Yeah, who's that?
Ben Harvey. He's a promising lawyer.
You know, what all did he promise you?
A life that has nothing whatsoever to do with the show business.
Now, hold on a minute. What's the dadblame wrong with what I do? You know, I'm happy when I'm up there in front of those folks. I know I'm making them happy too, so don't go getting your hopes up about reforming me. Because when you marry me, you're going to get exactly what you saw under that tent tonight, including the audience and nothing more.
Well, Will Rogers, whoever said anything about marrying you?
Oh. Well, I did just now. Is it a deal or not?
It's a deal.
Well, okay. Let's shake on it. We're heading for a wedding. It's gonna happen soon. Our hearts are intending to reach the happy ending that started on the moon.
Mr. Rogers. Just a moment, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, stop! Mr. Rogers, what is going on down there?
A wedding, of course. What's it look like?
But not now, Mr. Rogers. In a Ziegfeld show, the wedding always ends the act.
Yeah, well, with Betty and me, it preceded the act. Is that right, honey?
Will Rogers, they can hear you.
Move it along, Mr. Rogers. What happened next?
After we were married, you mean? Oh, well, gee, I'm real sorry, everybody, but don't worry, we'll see you later at the end of the act. Let's see, what happened next? Well, right after I kissed her, the organ player was playing Oh Promise Me, so I went and promised her.
Will, do you really mean it? Are you really through playing all those dreadful Wild West shows?
I sure am.
Thank you, Will.
From now on, it's strictly vaudeville.
Vaudeville?
Come on, Blake, you're gonna have the time of your life. Hand in hand we will cross the land from the West Coast way up to Maine. Boarding train after train. See the nation, a long vacation. What's to fear? We're together here. But my dear, before we can go, vaudeville has traditions. My young wife ought to know. There's the small time and the medium time and the big time and the medium small time.
Small time and the medium time and the big time.
And Kiwanis small time, big time, looks down on medium time.
Looks down on small time.
Looks down on accordion players, small time.
Big time,
Big, small, medium time. On the road from Maine to Dallas, hoping that we play the palace. Smiles from you are a brave review. Put a big time star on my door. I can hear the crowds roar. Spotlight hits me, the spotlight fits me. When you touch me and when you hold me, my name lights up the marquee. Just to know that you love me is the big time for me. See you later, Blake. I gotta go do the third show. I'll meet you afterwards at the Mexican restaurant.
Break a neck.
Leg.
Oh, leg, right. Sorry. Gosh. There's a small time to the medium time to the big time to the medium small time. Packing, unpacking, and packing. We're off to Altoona tomorrow. Goodbye, Altoona. Cooking, scrubbing, washing, ironing. Mend his breeches, feed his pony. Learn to live on cold bologna. Smiles from him make my senses swim. I get big time feelings inside. Once an ignorant bride, now I'm knowing and all a-glowing. When he holds me and when he loves me, we're close as lovers can be. On the circuit together, life is joyous and free. Thank goodness we have no family. We're only Will and me.
Howdy, I'm Will Rogers Jr. Howdy, I'm Mary Rogers. Howdy, I'm James Rogers. Howdy. Well, here comes Freddie. We're glad our dad's in vaudeville. Ain't we got fun? 'Cause we've been down in any town, not just in one. Before we're born with kids and me, we gotta run. There's no mean old school superintendent hounding us 'cause we're independent. At night our mommy reads to us and hears us pray. Then we sneak to the music hall, watch Daddy play. Scratch your skull, tilt your head, make the people glad. Folks ask us what we wanna be. When we grow up, we're gonna be just like Dad. Yeah! From the small time to the medium time to the big time, no more medium, small time, up, climbing up, no more small time, more Kiwanis small time, finish packing, let's get cracking, play your boots, it's gonna rain, do your homework on the train, smiles from us are a family, plus we're together getting along. Sometimes weak, sometimes strong, sad or happy, or mad or scrappy. Nothing's easy and nothing's perfect. We still complain and we fuss. But long as we stay together, it's the big time for us. Rogers and Rogers and Rogers, 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 Rogers. It's the big time for us.
Well, if Comanche don't mind, I sure don't.
I wanted them to do their homework now so that someone in this family gets past the 5th grade.
Come on, Blake. They've been all over the country. Think of the geography lessons they're getting. Have you folks noticed I always call my wife Blake when I'm in trouble? But lately I started calling her Blake all the time in case I was in trouble and didn't know it.
Will, we have to talk.
How do you make him go, Pa?
Well, you just holler giddy up and hold on.
Giddy up, Comanche! Whoa!
What were you saying, Blake?
Talk.
The beautiful Erlanger Theater presents the star of our show, that Oklahoma philosopher, Will Rogers!
Sorry, buddy, I got a show to do.
Will, we have to talk. When I was very young, I had the perfect life. My pa, the perfect husband, and my ma, the perfect wife. And every day my life went by so perfectly. I made some perfect plans, I dreamed some perfect dreams. But now I look around, my dreams are splitting at the seams. I made one big decision, and now look at me. When I do something wrong, I do it perfectly. My big mistake, roping you in. I got my wish, now I can't win. I thought once I caught you, you'd quit your roaming. But I'm the one who's caught in a world I'm not at home in. My big mistake, thinking you'd change, fancy in life, home on the range. 'Cause I like days all carefully reckoned. You live life from second to second, yet just touch me, and there's no other choice I'd make. I love my big mistake.
Betty Blake, telephone call for Miss Betty Blake.
Oh, it's you again, little Miss Understudy. You can relax. I'm feeling just fine. Oh, and by the way, the name is Rogers now. Betty Rogers. I'm married.
Oh, but Mr. Ziegfeld says the wedding always
Ends the act. I know. Don't tell him, but we saw Justice of the Peace in Buffalo 7 years ago. Oh, you won't tell Mr. Ziegfeld now, will you?
Oh, don't worry, honey. Your secret's safe with me.
Hello? Sulecki? Is that you? Well, how are you and all the other girls? Still single. How's my life? It's great. Of course, it is just great. Gosh, you should see all the deluxe hotels we stay at and the fancy restaurants we eat in here in, well, wherever it is that we are. The children? Oh gosh, they love it too, of course. Almost as much as I do. When are we coming home? Oh, geez, Lucky, I'm not sure. You know, when you're having the time of your life like we are, it's pretty hard to tear yourself away. Yes, I love you too. Tell the girls that I miss them, okay? Bye-bye. I like days all carefully reckoned. You live life from second to second.
Blake.
Will, I didn't see you.
You know, I was thinking during the show tonight. Well, how long we been out here? 7 years? Well, maybe my pa was right. Maybe we should have just stayed in Oklahoma.
Will, are you serious?
I sure am. Oh, let's face it, Blake, where I'm headed is nowhere. Well, Oklahoma's as good as nowhere any day.
But Will, you are at the top of the bill now.
Yeah, in Cedar Rapids and still earning only $100 a week. You know, maybe a fella has a right to go on kidding himself, but not when he's got a wife and kids.
But Will,
I don't care how much you love the life, Blake. We're going home to Oklahoma. My mind's made up. Now, what is it you wanted to talk to me about?
Oh, Will, I love you so much. But are you really sure?
Yeah, of course I am. Look, if my big break was going to come along, it would have been here by now.
Telegram for Mr. Rogers. Telegram for Mr. Will Rogers.
That's me.
Are you Will Rogers, that roping fool?
Nope. As of right now, I'm just Will Rogers. Thank you.
Mr. Will Rogers, Fox Theater, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Dear Mr. Rogers, pleased to invite you to the 9th edition of my Follies, starring W.C. Fields, Eddie Cantor, and Edwin Stop. Can offer you a salary of $600 a week, stop. Expecting an immediate and affirmative reply, most sincerely, Florence Ziegfeld.
Will, what is it? Bad news? Your father's not sick again, is he?
No, it's nothing important, just another booking. Look, why don't you go pack up and collect the kids, and I'll give notice, and, well, we can be back on the ranch by Sunday night.
Oh, Will. You will never regret this. After all, it's not as though you were giving up a really big opportunity or anything. I mean, turning down a 5-day in Cedar Rapids is not like giving up, say, the Ziegfeld Follies? I mean, you can't expect anyone in their right mind to turn down the Follies. Why talk about that? Who in their right mind would offer you the Follies?
You're being a great sport about this, Blake, but, you know, I don't even know if those folks in New York will put up with my little act with the rope.
It is not a little act anymore, Will. Not since that day back in Milwaukee when you got all tangled up in the Texas skip and you ad-libbed that line. Heck, folks, looks like I got all my feet through but one there.
Get out of here.
You're a talker now, Will. Mr. Ziegfeld does not pay $600 a week for a few rope tricks. And you give him a new show every night. All I know is what I read in the papers. There is not another act like yours anywhere in the circuit. And that is why we are asking for $700.
Blake, I love you so much.
It's the Follies, and there's no other choice to make. I love my big
Hello, ladies.
Hello, Will.
Don't catch cold now. You know, Mr. Ziegfeld spends millions of dollars on costumes. So I don't understand why he don't let the girls wear them. Anyway, I'd like to thank you folks for making it out to my anniversary. This here marks my 2,500th consecutive performance at the Follies here in New York. Now, a whole lot has happened in that amount of time. The world lost a few important men. Teddy Roosevelt died, Tsar Nicholas of Russia, and my pa, Mr. Clem Rogers. Now, it might surprise you folks to know that the three of them shared something in common. That's right. None of them ever caught my act. Anyway, I got an important announcement to make. This here is my final appearance at the Follies. Tomorrow I'm headed off to Hollywood, California to be a screen actor. That's what I said. Not only that, but I'll be flying out there by aeroplane.
Be careful, Will.
Well, I won't actually be doing the flying. I'll just be along for the ride. I'll leave the flying to those folks who know how, like Wiley Post.
Take off, hey, let's go flying.
Let's go flying, Will.
Hello, Wiley. How come you're always here?
Well, I'm waiting for you, Will. You promised you'd fly up to Alaska with me.
Well, not yet. That don't happen till the end of the show.
Oh.
I never saw a fella so anxious to break his neck. And mine, too. Anyway, like I said, I'm off to Hollywood. My only regret is that my pa didn't live long enough to see me up there in the silver screen. Well, he never would have approved of it, though. The way he used to say it, an actor's ego is the only thing that continues to grow without nourishment. Another thing I'd like to try my hand at is this new device we got called the radio.
Well, that'll be an improvement. At least they won't be able to see you.
Pa, what are you doing here? I told him you already died. You died 6 years ago.
So did some of your jokes, but they're still hanging around.
Hey, where'd you get those wings? From wardrobe?
Hell no. They're real.
You know, I was just telling the folks what a shame it was you never lived to see my success.
Success? What success?
Well, you know what I do, Pa. I'm the star of this show.
Not as far as I'm concerned. Hello, ladies.
Hello, Uncle Clem.
Forget it, Pa. You're dead.
Yeah, but they're not. What was it you were saying, Will?
Well, I'm going out to Hollywood to be a movie star.
You? Well, I may be dead, son, but I'm not blind. You're sure not much to look at.
Yeah, I reckon that's half your fault. You know, instead of running me down all the time, Pa, you ought to be proud.
Proud?
Yeah, I make people laugh. But just ask the audience. They like what I do.
What do they know? They root for the Sharks. Now, let me tell you something, Will.
Mr. Rogers.
Yep. Oh, I think he's talking to me, Pa.
Mr. Rogers, what the hell's going on down there? I'm paying you to do a show.
Oh, yes, sir. I better get back to work, Pa.
Let me tell you something, Will. I know I wanted you to be a rancher like me. But if it wasn't in you, you could have been a doctor or an inventor. Someone who makes a difference, who changes the world. 'Cause that's what greatness is, son. Leaving the world different from the way you found it.
Well, it's great to be great, Pa, but it's greater to be human.
Don't you want to be great, son?
Well, no man's great if he thinks he is, Pa.
Who said that?
I did.
Yeah? Well, it's not so bad. What's going on?
I don't know. It sounds like a wedding. Oh, must be the end of Act 1. You better get going now, Pa.
All right, Will. Goodbye, ladies.
Goodbye, Uncle Clem.
Just remember one thing. Life isn't as long as the young think it is. You want to have something to look back on, something we both can be proud of. Why, any morning you could wake up dead and then it's too late. Take it from me. It comes up on you faster than you think. Take it from me.
Blake, you look beautiful.
So do you.
I'm not exactly dressed for a wedding.
Don't worry, you will be.
We're heading for a wedding.
For a wedding.
Number 2.
That's wedding number 2.
I loved it the first time. How could this be a worse time as long as it's with you? Marry me now. Marry me then. I don't care how, or where, why, or when. Anytime you ask Ask me, I'll rush to the altar. Won't even falter. The farthest time. Ask me this fall. Ask me next spring. Can't get enough of such a good thing. Make my life a honeymoon heaven for two. All my days and my nights, like Turkish delights. Marrying you.
Wedding for a wedding, as Mr. Secret said. With laughing and waving and lots of baby to float through Daddy's head. Oh!
I got you for the second time. I got you, it's our second slice. I got you double ecstasy. I got you twice as nice. Down to the altar I'll sidle. I feel twice as bridal. No shy violet, let's midlife. I got you
Fall.
and then twice as good.
Ask me next spring.
Like I did before.
Can't get enough.
Chances not enough.
Such
I
a
love
good
you,
thing.
so I beg for more.
Make my life a honeymoon heaven for two.
A honeymoon heaven.
My days and
Till
my
107.
Like Turkish
I'm gonna
delights. Marrying you. We're heading for a wedding that happened years ago. We've tasted wedded bliss now, but let's just steal a kiss now, as if we didn't know. We're heading for a wedding. We promise you a wedding. I think a kind of wedding. And now here comes the wedding.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in this hallowed hall to unite these two people. I'm playing this part under protest. Mr. Ziegfeld was too damn stingy to pay another actor. Do you, Betty Blake, take this no account to be your lawful wedded husband, even though some fool say he's going to be America's biggest star, which means he'll be so famous he'll hardly ever be at home, for richer or poorer, for better or worse?
I do.
And to you, William Penn Adair Rogers, take this saintly woman who deserves better to be your lawful wedded wife, even though she will never quit trying to stop you from flying to Alaska with Wiley Post till death do you part.
Yep.
Then with the power vested in me by Mr. Ziegfeld, that cheapskate, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride, Sonny.
Hand in hand they will cross the land from the East Coast out to L.A., where the movie stars play. Will they thrive there and stay alive there? Have no fears like the pioneers in their covered wagons they'll go. Handsome heartthrobs move over. Will's the new face to know. Rogers and Rogers and Rogers, 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 Rogers. It's the big time. Westward Ho! a man enough room, give 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 a man enough room.
Well, you're getting there. You're getting there.
I'm trying, Mr. Rogers.
Say, how you doing on that short Texas skip with a chimney sweep that I taught you?
Could you show me one more time?
Well, okay. Ah, you've been practicing that thing long enough. It's time for you to give it a try. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Larry Lopez. Well, I hope you folks had a good rest during the intermission. I know I did. Now, a number of things happened while you ladies are out there standing in line. We had 3 different presidents. Mr. Harding, Mr. Coolidge, and Mr. Hoover. All of them Republicans, of course. Now, the Democrats say they could have elected someone themselves if it wasn't for that pesky law that says you're only allowed to vote once. We also had that monkey trial down in Tennessee that tried to prove that man was descended from apes. Well, I never did believe that, because I have not yet met an ape that was devious, heartless, or greedy. You know, I sort of figured man was descended from lawyers. Well, like I always say, all I know is what I read in the papers. And lately they've been using this new word, ecology, which only means, as far as I can tell, our land. Now, the pioneers who didn't know any better went and cut down every tree in sight and never did replant one. They plowed up all the ground that should have been left to grass the way God intended. Now, what they thought it was the land they were living off of. But what they were really living off of was future generations. Because the trouble with land is, well, they're just not making the stuff anymore. Look around, the world's a lovely sight, lovely sky and sea, well it used to be. Look around, the world is shining bright, watch the green grass grow, well that once was so. Where's the spring that loved the rain? Where's the grove down Lover's Lane? Look around, disappear from sight. Where's the lovely world I used to see? Ooh, close the open skies, the view clear to the horizon. Just look around, you'll see a memory. Well, now that I got that off my chest, I suppose you folks are just dying to know how it was that I came to run for president of these United States. Well, it was in the spring of 1928, and this really distinguished fella came to see me at the Astor Hotel in New York City.
Mr. Rogers, have you ever thought of running for president of the United States?
That's the fella. Now, I swear to you, everything you're about to hear is the gospel truth, so help me Ziegfeld.
Mr. Rogers, now that you're back on top as the #1 box office star of stage, screen, radio, and newspapers, wouldn't you like to try for president?
I don't know. Politics is the only branch of show business I ain't tried yet.
This country needs you, Mr. Rogers.
Well, I know this country's used to having anything at all named as a presidential candidate, but we've not yet sunk the professional actor stage. That's what I said in 1928, folks.
Would you mind telling me what political party you belong to?
Well, I'm not a member of any organized party. I'm a Democrat.
Would you consider running as the candidate of the Debunk Party?
Debunk?
Exactly. Mr. Rogers, you've been invited to speak at the Republican Convention in Kansas City, and you've also been invited to speak at the Democratic Convention in Houston.
Ah, the Democrats. They always have more fun at their conventions, because they know they're not going anywhere afterwards.
So what do you say, Mr. Rogers, since you're the first man in history who's been asked to address both conventions in the same year, you can ask them directly to vote for you.
Now, have you ever heard of anything so nonsensical in your whole life, folks? Well, a person would have to be plumb loco to give up a useful career in anything just to go into politics.
So, will you run for president or not, Mr. Rogers?
I sure will.
Elephant trunk and Democrat donkey will be down the drain and sunk. The day the people's victory is won. Rich spirit and spunky's gonna debunk the jabber and junk that they've been feeding us. Hooray for our favorite son.
You Democrats and Republicans, I'm asking for your vote. I got this debunk party with some new ideas to float. Don't ask me what my platform is, I leave that stuff alone. 'Cause no one keeps those promises, as history has shown. I'll run a clean campaign and that will be my winning card. Considering the kind you've had, well, that won't be too hard.
Mr. Chairman, the great Sooner State of Oklahoma, by clean sweep, by acclamation, we proudly place the nomination. The great Sooner State of Oklahoma, cast its 22 votes. Rogers, William Panadere Rogers, William Panadere Rogers, yeah! The elephant trunk and Democrat donkey will be down the drain and sunk. The day the people's victory is won. With spirit and spunky's gonna debunk the jabber and junk that they've been feeding us. Hooray for our favorite son.
Thank you.
Hooray, 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 hooray.
With spirit and spunk, it's gonna be fun. The Deborah does the same as beating us. Hooray for our favorite, hooray for our favorite, hooray for our favorite son.
Now, those of you who bothered studying history might recall that I did not get elected president. The actual fact is I did manage to carry one state, namely the District of Columbia, which, as it turns out, isn't any kind of a state at all. But I did take that as a personal compliment, since it's those folks in Washington that have to put up with the fella for the next 4 years. I do have one bit of advice, though, for any nominees of the future. Don't go telling the truth. Because in American politics, nothing will hurt you more than telling the truth. Meanwhile, back at the ranch. Right. Now, Mr. Ziegfeld always likes to have a part in his show he calls Trouble in Paradise. See, only in this case, paradise is Hollywood, California. Well, I guess we're pretty rich by now. We had our own polo field, and our little ranch house had 22 rooms. The only trouble was, because of my job, I wasn't able to spend as much time at home with my family as I would have liked. So this is a place where the leading lady sings a torch song about her troubles while sitting on top of a piano.
Alone again in blue. He's left me alone again. What's new? All I do is sit and stare at a snapshot and an empty chair. What good's a man who's never there? He's a traveling man, he's a flying man, after dinner speaker, speechifying man. He's a one-man show on the radio. He's a columnist, friend of presidents, movie star for all the nation's residents. Ziegfeld starring man, walking, talking man, Mr. Busy Bee. There's no sometimes I tell myself the worm's turning. I'll pack a bag and leave him flat. But every time I start, this feeling floods my heart. He needs me to feed the cat. Though when I'm by myself, I'm so lonesome. A party makes it twice as grim. People laugh and play. My mind is miles away. It's off on the road with him. A hotel staying man, suitcase packing man. When I look around me, he's the lacking man. He's the most anywhere. Land or sea or it's so plain to see. He won't miss me. He don't need me. Gonna get away from Mr. Busy Bee. I can't make love to a shadow, and there's no man left for me. Thank you, Hastings. I feel much better now.
Thank you, madam. Would you believe what he's got me doing now? Will there be anything else, madam?
No, thank you, Hastings. Where are the children?
They're off stage, madam, waiting for their entrance music.
Well, I thought it'd be safer to change the subject, so I spent a few minutes getting reacquainted with the kids. Oh, by the way, a lot of people have been asking me how come the children never get any bigger. I told them, of course, they got bigger, but in order to demonstrate that, we'd have to get a whole new set of kids. And Mr. Ziegfeld says 4 of them's enough for any show. Oh, by the way, there really only ought to be 3 of them by now. Little Freddie here passed away in the diphtheria epidemic of the 1920s. I'm afraid you're going to have to run along now, son.
Do I have to, Pa? Grandpa Clem's dead and he gets to stay in the show.
I guess you got me there. All right, you can stay. Hold on, but you're all going to have to go up to your rooms. Your mom and I have to speak. She's awful upset about something, and there's no use pretending I don't know what it is. So go on up to your rooms.
All the way up!
All right, halfway's good enough. Now go on, scoot. How bad is it, Blake?
Pretty bad. Last time you were home, you couldn't remember where the bathroom was.
It's a pretty big house, Blake.
Even bigger without you in it. Will, do you realize that for the past year alone, you have turned out 4 full-length talking pictures, 52 radio shows, 365 newspaper columns, spoken at 151 banquets, and visited 19 countries on 5 continents?
I know that, Blake.
Well, sure, you know it, but they don't. Will, why do you keep traveling? What are you looking for?
People. You know, I just can't get over them. Blake, no matter how different they look or talk, they're all just the same. Of course, I know there's getting to be too many of them, but one thing I've learned is that they all want exactly the same thing. 3 meals a day and a good night's sleep.
Well, we're people too, Will. And all we want is more of you.
Does that mean you don't want all these expensive presents I brought you?
What presents?
Well, I got them waiting outside, but here's a small sample. That there is the most famous amethyst in the world. I got it in Ceylon. Came off a statue of a goddess, but I thought it'd look better on you.
Will, this must have cost you a fortune. You shouldn't have spent so much money.
Ain't life crazy, folks? I got a wife telling me not to spend what my pa said I'd never make.
Will, I want you to take it back.
To Ceylon? Okay. See ya.
Will Rogers, get back here. Okay, I'll keep it. But I still can't believe that we are this rich.
Why, haven't you read the papers lately, Blake? Prosperity has arrived. The whole country's rich. There has never been a time in our history when so many fools have made money. Well, haven't you heard what President Hoover's been telling us, Blake? 2 chickens in every pot, 2 cars in every garage, 2 mortgages on every home, and 2 hearts in 3/4 time. So let's just relax and enjoy it. We've been through so much together, dark torrential weather. We've managed to muddle through every muddy puddle. Old Saul would never shine, still you kept your hand in mine. Now comes the sun, why run? Oh, stick to me, baby, let's click up our heels. Taste the best of it, sniff the zest of it, feel how luxury feels. Take the fruits of our labors and splurge to the hilt. We deserve to be blooming before we must wilt. Where's the gold in a good life if you're knee-deep in guilt? Listen, honey, it's only money. Diamonds for Mrs. Rogers. They shine so bright like the light in your eyes. Rubies for Mrs. Rogers. Not like those rhinestones you once got from other guys. Sapphires so blue and brilliant, they all combine to make your gems red, white, and blue.
with all these jewels above, I'm saluting our love. I'm true blue to the flag and true to you. Emeralds for Mrs. Rogers, 'cause I turn green when you don't look my way. Topaz, not quite so precious. Perhaps Madame could wear them on some rainy day.
On some rainy day, pearls.
Pearls for Mrs. Rogers, to grace the neckline of the queen who rules my heart. Rare as the jewels above, you were fashioned for love. You are nature's perfect living work of art. Diamonds, for Mrs. Rogers. They seem so dim when compared to your eyes. Topaz, and precious emeralds, and rubies red and sapphires blue in just your size. Pearls for Mrs. Rogers. These are necessities no wife of mine should lack. If you will have nothing of all these proofs of my love, I'll throw them in a sack and take them back.
Stop it at once, do you hear me? Peter, come out on stage immediately.
Yes, Mr. Z.
What are those people doing, Peter?
Sorry, Mr. Z, we're shutting down.
Shutting down? I didn't order anyone to shut down.
I know, Mr. Z. There's been a general economic collapse because of the stock market crash. There's a depression going on.
Outside, maybe, but not in here. This is the Follies, Peter. I don't allow any depression in here.
We've run out of money, Mr. Z. We can't meet our payroll. Everybody here is out of work, just like the rest of the country. I'm sorry, sir. That's just the way it is. Sorry.
Mr. Ziegfeld? Mr. Ziegfeld? What about me? Mr. Ziegfeld?
Will, does that mean that we're poor again?
No, not us. A whole lot of folks, but not us.
Well, why not us, Will?
I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm in the cheering up business, and right now that business has never been better. I just don't feel right about it. Blake, how can I face all those folks who lost everything? What can I say to them?
Will, do you remember something that you said to me a long time ago? A man makes his living by what he gets. He makes his life by what he gives.
I said that?
Yes.
It's not so bad. But what can I give them now?
What do you mean? The past 2 years you've done benefits for flood relief, drought relief, famine relief. How much more can one man do?
Blake, the president wants me to go on the radio after his speech tonight and I'll make everybody feel better about things, but I don't know what to tell them.
Tell them what you've always told them, Will. The truth.
10 seconds, Mr. Rogers.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have just heard an address by the President of the United States. the Honorable Herbert Hoover. And now, at Mr. Hoover's invitation, a few words from America's favorite humorist, Mr. Will Rogers.
The president wanted someone to follow him tonight who could cheer you folks up. Well, he must have been pretty desperate if he had to ask a Democrat. The only problem is who's going to cheer me up. Because all I know is what I read. All I know is what I see on the street corners. What I see tonight are people without jobs and without homes and without food. And they're our own people, American people. Well, I hear tell that at least 16 million souls are unemployed. Now that's a full third of our workforce. Now these people are asking for our help. They're not asking for charity, they're just asking for a job. The next best thing we can do is see to it that they have food and the necessities of life. You know, it wasn't the working man who brought this depression thing on at all. It was the big boys themselves who thought this financial junk we were going through was going to last forever. So they overborrowed and overmerged and overcapitalized and over everything else. Until that's the fix we're in now. People are starving to death. Americans. Can you hear that? Here in this country with more wheat and more corn and more everything else than any other country in the face of the earth, and we got people starving. We'll hold the distinction of being the only country in the history of the world that ever went to the poorhouse in an automobile. Well, it's up to us, every one of us who doesn't go to bed hungry at night, to see to it that nobody else does either. You know, I don't know about us being fundamentally sound or any of that other political hooey, but I do know that Americans are fundamentally liberal. They aren't going to stand for people going hungry. You know, you'd think some of our big men would understand that and they'd try to fix it and try to arrange a better distribution of things. Well, if they don't do that, then they're not big men, and that's all there is to it. Where are all our big men? Lord, we sure could use one now. Can't say anything more about it than that.
That's the sorriest looking sight I ever saw.
Hello, Pa.
What's the matter with you, boy? You're standing there like a mope.
Well, I never thought I'd hear myself saying this, Pa, but I guess you were right.
Well, of course I was right. About what?
About me. You know, people are in trouble, Pa, real trouble. All I ever did about it was tell jokes. But I guess I run out of those.
Those weren't jokes you were cracking, son.
So you kept telling me, Pa.
I don't know what the hell they were, but they sure made folks feel better. You know, there was this fellow on the ranch, Indian, of course, who used to say that the smartest people in the world are the ones that answer the questions that the rest of us weren't smart enough to ask. I figure that's sort of what you've been doing.
Well, what good did it do?
I don't know. Maybe none at all.
Well, you always told me that I had to leave things different from the way I found them.
I know what I told you, boy. But I've learned things from where I sit now. It takes time to judge the true worth of a man. Someone who looks awful big today could turn out to be a joke in the history books. They're going to forget the names of senators, judges, millionaires, presidents even. What? Hell, I just learned about Franklin Pierce last week. But I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere down the pike they're going to remember you.
Franklin Pierce? Was he a president?
So they say, right between Fillmore and Buchanan.
Huh. I've never heard of them either.
Well, that's what I'm trying to tell you, Will. You were different. You never stopped telling folks what damn fools they are. Because you're too simple to have any malice in you, you made them love every minute of it. Now, I'm going to tell you a joke. Seems there was this ugly old sinner arrived at the pearly gates, And St. Peter said, well, I'm sorry, but your name isn't in the book. And the old sinner thought for a minute, and then he said, but I'm Will Rogers' father. St. Peter smiled, and he said, well, why the hell didn't you say so? I'm saying so now, son. I'm proud of you. Well, aren't you going to thank me?
For what, Pa?
Your success.
My success?
Well, hell yes. It just goes to prove there's a whole lot more of me and you than both of us ever suspected. Your wit and wisdom let us see all the foibles of this century. What a man. A hell of a man was my Will. Just multiply me by the millions.
Gee, Pop, just one of you will do.
Your public numbers in the billions.
Like you've been saying, Pa, I owe it all to you.
Will the mayor, he's welcome at the White House. Will sure gets around.
He talks up everywhere and tells us what's what. How we stop, signals gone hotter than hot.
Let's go flying, Will.
Is that you, Wiley?
So long, son. I'll be seeing you pretty soon, I expect.
What do you mean, Pa?
Time to go flying, Will. See you, Willie.
Are you talking about Alaska, Wiley?
I'm afraid so.
Not yet. I ain't ready.
No one ever is, son.
But I got so much more I want to do.
Don't fight it, Willie.
Pa!
Let's go, Will.
I just need a little more time, Wiley.
Say your goodbyes, Will. I'll be waiting for you at the field.
Will, do you really have to go?
Well, I guess so.
Why?
Because I went.
Will Rogers, if anything happens to you, if you get yourself killed,
What'll you do, Blake?
I will never speak to you again. Without you, I'm a nameless face. Without you, I'm the lowest rung. Without you, lost in no man's land. Without you, I'm a song unsung.
Well, we just left that lagoon in Alaska when I noticed the plane wasn't doing what Wiley said it would do. Namely, fly. We're going down, Wiley, I remarked as casually as possible under the circumstances. Hell, Will, said Wiley, nobody stays up forever. I guess old Wiley was right about a lot of things. Anyway, the plane went straight down, and, well, the law of gravity being the only law that human beings have not yet broke, old Wiley and I decided to go right along with it. The papers must have been pretty hard up for weekend news. That'd explain why they made such a big fuss over it. We got 4 pages in the Saturday New York Times and another 4 pages on Sunday. That put us right up there with that other big crash, the one on Wall Street. Pretty good for a one-eyed flyer and a half-breed rope spinner.
The accident occurred on August 15th, 1935, 300 miles north of the Arctic Circle near Point Barrow, Alaska.
Colonel Charles A. Lindbergh took personal charge of bringing the bodies home.
You know, old Lucky Lindy was always a personal favorite of mine. He was the first person to prove that you could get an entire front page in the New York Daily News without murdering anybody.
On August 22nd, the last rites were held in Los Angeles, California.
50,000 people filed by the casket.
President and Mrs. Roosevelt sent an expression of grief.
You know, a funeral's a funny thing when you stop to think about it. What gives folks a chance to say all kinds of nice things that they didn't want you to hear when you were alive?
He was only 55 years old.
They gotta look on the bright side. A prolonged life ruined more reputations than it ever made.
In Washington, both houses of Congress observed a minute of silence for my son.
I know a minute don't sound like much. Until you realize whose mouth is staying shut.
Flags throughout the country flew at half-mast.
The nation's motion picture theaters went dark.
Both NBC and CBS went off the air for a full half hour.
Through the media of radio, motion pictures, and newspaper syndication, Will Rogers reached more people around the world than anyone in history before him.
Mostly because most of those gadgets didn't come along until I did. I am kind of glad I missed out on television, though. I would have hated cheating folks out of a good book.
In New York, a squadron of airplanes from the Army Air Corps flew in formation over the city.
Each plane towed a long black streamer behind it.
I always loved airplanes. I never missed an opportunity to go up in one. Yeah, I never could get my pa to go up, though. He used to say that if God had meant for man to fly, he wouldn't have made the ground so hard.
Will Rogers traveled to 6 continents and met almost every king and head of state on the earth.
Not since Abraham Lincoln had the death of an American touched so many people.
He told us the truth, made us laugh at it.
People are always asking me what it was like to be married to a national monument. But of course, I never saw him that way. After all, national monuments do not kiss back.
When he was in Washington, he stayed in the White House.
When he was home, he was the best husband in the world.
You know, ever since I moved out to Hollywood, I was something of a curiosity. I was the only fella in the movie business who still had the same wife he started out with. And the reason for this was simple. The day I roped Betty Blake, it was the best trick I ever performed in my life. There has not been a single minute since I first met Blake that I didn't love her with all my heart. Now, I know I wasn't the easiest person to be married to. Betty used to say that her only competition was everybody else in the world. I always told her she didn't have to worry. I didn't love everybody else in the world. I merely liked her. You know, I guess I met a lot of people in my lifetime, and I always tried to approach them the same way my Indian ancestors would. You see, an Indian always looks back after he passes something to get a better view of it from both sides. Now, a white man don't do that. He just figures all sides of a thing are automatically the same. But that is why you must never judge a man while you're facing him. You got to circle around behind him and get a look at what he's looking at. Then come back and face him, and you'll get a completely different idea of who he is. You'd be surprised how much easier it is for folks to get along with one another. I've come a long way down the pipe. Ever met a man I didn't like. Ever shook a hand I didn't like. Prince of Wales, or working Joe, though I know life's one long rocky hike. Never met a man I didn't like. All my wandering bumped into all kinds of people. Fancy cinema stars, fake evangelists, politicians, morticians, and I had reached a conclusion while hiking the pike. Though I try and I try, never once met a guy that I didn't like. Said I roamed along the Napa Valley, Schubert Alley, Rue de la Paix, Oklahoma and Kalamazoo. And I had reached the conclusion while hiking the pike. Yes, I'll say till I'm done, though I never met one
test almost made me change my mind. Yet somehow I always find if you don't expect too much, there's a certain human touch. Homo sapiens has got, yeah, other animals have not. Tried the shoes on that are his, feel what makes him what he is, what it's like inside his skin, living in the skin he's in, just like me, a lump of sod, there before the grace of God. That is our philosophy of this part-time Cherokee. President King or Pat and Mike, folks can laugh, but I can't give up hope. That's what I wrote a long way down the pike. Never met a man I didn't like. High-toned gent, Bowery Bum, Prince of Wales, Working Joe, Pat and Mike, Cherokee philosophy. Never met a man I didn't like. So much. I can honestly say that we all feel the same way about you. It really was our pleasure to perform for you folks this evening, and you might be interested to know that when we were doing our research, we ran into an article that Will wrote about being here in San Jose this time of the year. He wrote that he'd never seen the place looking so beautiful after all those tremendous rains came and washed all the real estate signs away. Anyway, we'd like you all to go out and have a terrific life, and our best advice on how to do that is to start leading your life in such a way that you won't be embarrassed for Mr. Ziegfeld to do a show about you. Thank you so much for coming, and so long.